Today's episode of The Ride is brought to you by Weaver Leather.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Ride. This is Nicole,
And I'm Michaela.
and we're back with another episode. This time we got to sit down with Bud Lyon, who is one of Horse and Rider On Demand's original experts. He spends most of his time in the reining and the ranch riding arenas and has done really well in both of those, but he also has a start in the cow horse industry. So we kind of go back to the beginning and talk about all things horse related for him, how he got involved. Him and I have a similar experience where we both grew up in very urban developments. I'm from Chicago and he is from Southern California. And so we kind of talk about, how it's different to get involved in horses when you don't necessarily live in an area where equine sports are the norm and, everybody around you is involved in it.
Yeah, no, it was so fun to get to sit down and talk to Bud. I know that we have been trying to talk to Bud for a while now on the podcast, and we were finally able to align our schedules and sit down and talk to him. And oh my gosh, we could have talked for at least a day, I'm pretty sure. Like, we need to give Bud his own podcast because he was just rocking and rolling with all the good information that anybody could ever think about wanting.
Yeah, Michaela and I usually have like a little, as much as we like to have a conversational interview during these, we always have a couple of questions stashed away just in case, we need them. And I think we maybe got to like three of the questions because there was just so much conversation about the topics that we were covering that, yeah, we definitely need a part two because we didn't even get through half of his horse life because there was just so much to go over. And Bud is so great to talk to, and he has so many great things to say. And as a professional in the horse industry, we cover the the importance of the ranch riding classes and how ranch trail is a new event that's going to be huge, and the importance of that and bringing in new people and all of that. And I'm super excited for everybody to listen to it because I think you'll get to learn more about Bud and who he is, and hopefully check out his on-demand series because I every month his videos are at the top of the most watched list, and it's easy to know why. He is so knowledgeable, and everything that he does can be applied regardless of what kind of riding you do.
Absolutely. And kind of switching gears to go into our current events, but kind of staying with on demand, we are adding more and more trainers to our on demand program. I think last week was the first video release with Molly Powell for barrel racing, and we have Monique Potts for natural horsemanship. We are going to start releasing cutting videos with Winston Hansma soon. So we are just hoping to give you guys a larger library of videos so you can go and watch whatever you want and apply them to whatever type of writing you do.
Yeah, and on top of the ones that Michaela just listed, we also have a reining series that'll be coming out with Ryan Rushing. I just did a ranch horse versatility series with Cody Crow, and that'll also be coming out. So, yeah, we have tons of content in all sorts of disciplines. I know that on the list for this year, I'm planning on reaching out to a couple of all around horse trainers that I know from my 20 years of being in the all around industry. And we have more videos coming with some of our, favorites with Monique and of course Brad and Bud, who have been with the platform from the beginning. And so it's turning into be such a cool platform with so many different videos from so many different trainers and disciplines, and you can learn really whatever you want to learn about horse training from it.
Yeah, and not just horse training. You can learn fitness and fitness that can be applied to horseback riding, which I think is huge because a lot of people think that you can just go and carry buckets and you'll be strong and fit for your ride, but that's not the case. And so you have the videos, and you're also writing a blog for Horse and Rider with Kelly, the same expert for our on-demand videos, so you can get the best of both worlds on horseandrider.com and Horse and Rider on demand.
Yeah, Kelly Altswager, who owns Western Workouts, and we've actually done a podcast interview with her. So most of you are probably familiar with who you are, but if you didn't get a chance to listen to that episode, I highly recommend going back and listening to it because she talks so much about, Kelly. The really great thing about Kelly is that she is a fitness expert and a nutritionist, but she also is a rainer and she goes on backcountry rides. So she truly understands the equestrian's body and what we need to survive, when we're out and about doing the, crazy things that we're doing, whether you're driving 20 hours on the road to get to a horse show across the country, or if you're just getting ready to go for like an all day trail ride in the mountains. So yeah, I love working with Kelly. She's become a really close friend of mine through the years, all because of Horse and Rider. And I actually started working with her on a personal level for my personal nutrition because I felt that I needed to up my game for nutrition because I'm showing again, and being fit and strong and capable of fueling my body properly was really important to me. And I know, Michaela, you and I have very similar opinions on that. So, yeah, on a personal level, I'm working with Kelly because I think what she has to say for the magazine and the videos and all that is so important that I am doing it personally and spending my own money to, work with her and her expertise because it's so important. But yeah, I love it. We're talking, our first blog was about preparing for an all day ride, whether you're going to go into the backcountry, you're going to be doing an overnight ride, or if you're just going to go and trail ride from morning until afternoon. She talks about stretches and exercises that you can do to build yourself up physically so that you're strong enough to do what you want to do and not get sore in the saddle, because I don't know about you, but I get sore when I'm riding all day. But then she also goes over some of her favorite things that she likes to pack when she is on a trail ride, to help her stay fueled and happy and healthy and hydrated. So, yeah, that was the first one that came out. Super excited about it. I love working with Kelly.
Yeah, no, I am so excited to read more about these blogs because, like you said, our views align so much on health and fitness. And one of the things that you mentioned was the fact that you're, spending your own money on this and doing it for your own health and for your own riding. And I just want to say that as editors of this magazine, we really do strive to live our best Western horse life and do everything. So everything that you see in the magazine is stuff that Nicole and I fully back and believe in because we're truly out here riding horses, trying to be fit, and doing our best in the show pen.
Yeah, I think practicing what you preach is really important. And, I truly believe that everything that I write for the magazine, whether it's digital or print or even in this podcast, like these are all things that I truly believe in and I think are important. And yeah, so I do believe that fitness is super important. And we get a lot of people, in the comment section that say, well, I'm at the barn all day doing chores, so I don't need to work out. And the truth is yeah, like you're getting a lot of physical activity, but are you, doing the right things for your body, or are you actually harming yourself? And that's actually going to be our next post. And I'm super excited about that because I never thought about that. I never thought that some of the chores that I do around the barn could be actually hurting my body instead of helping it, even though I'm being physical and I'm outside and I'm lifting stuff and I'm, doing that. I'm actually hurting my body because I'm not doing it right. So I hope people give, a chance to read that blog and kind of, see the importance of it and maybe try to apply one or two of those things in your daily life. Obviously, it's really hard to change everything at once, as I'm learning as I do this nutrition journey. It's hard, but it's really great information, and it'll keep you going and riding longer too, which is also important.
Yeah, another thing in current events, not to just totally change gears, but we wanted to remind you guys about the AHP survey that you guys should be taking. You can access that on our Facebook page. Go to our website, you'll be able to find it. So we need to know this information to better help serve you guys in the equine industry.
The American Horse Publications comes out with a survey. I think this might be the fifth time they've done it. And the information that we get back from it really helps us form our content for you guys because we learn more about what is really important to you, what topics are important to you, what your horse owning habits are. Are you going to horse shows? Are you going to clinics? Are you just staying at home? And so the more people who take the survey, the better. This is only to help us reach the horse industry the best that we can. So yeah, be sure to check it out. I think it ends March 30th though. So make sure that if you are going to take it, that you take it before then.
Yeah, for sure.
Another thing that just happened was the World's Greatest Horsemen finals, which Michaela and I both agree, this might be our favorite event of the year. We so enjoy it, and it's definitely on the bucket list to watch in person sometime. I was actually supposed to go to Fort Worth this year to compete possibly at the NRCHA Celebration of Champions, but unfortunately, some wildfires happened in Colorado last year, and I wasn't able to get to the last horse show that I needed to go to qualify. So I was a little bummed that I missed out this year. However, I'm kind of glad that it all worked out because it was freezing in Texas and people were dealing with, no water, frozen pipes, no heat. It was mass chaos, and the horse show was no different. I know I talked to Brad Barkemeyer, and he told me that they were washing their horse trailer, their living quarters, their dishes in a water bucket and soap at the stalls because they didn't have any water at their horse trailer. So there were definitely some challenges this year at the Celebration of Champions, but the World's Greatest Horseman went on as planned, and it was so exciting to watch. And a mare won, which I'm always so excited for the mares because I feel like there's always this uh idea that a stallion is stronger and more powerful and able to get the job done better. And I love when you see a powerful mare come out and show them all who is boss.
Oh my gosh, she was my absolute favorite to watch. Like, it's clear why she was the winner because everything was just absolutely stunning and flawless. I loved watching her work, and you could just tell that she was the winner of the group.
Yeah, it was really cool to watch. But as always, I mean, the men and women, there were two women in the finals this year. The ability to do all four events like that and to be so good at all four events is just so amazing to watch all by itself. So win or lose, to be in the finals of an event like that is such a huge accomplishment and a compliment to their riding skill and their partnership with their horses.
Yeah, so maybe next year Nicole and I will venture down to watch it, and it won't be freezing cold. And maybe Nicole will be able to compete down there next year. So that's on our list of
Yeah,
things to do.
yeah, not the world's greatest horseman, but we'll start
Not
small
yet,
and maybe
anyway.
do
We'll,
the
we'll get there.
anyway. I think we should probably get to the interview because I know that's what y'all are excited about. So here is our interview with Bud. I hope you guys enjoy it. Weaver Leather's EcoLux bamboo gear is made from organic bamboo, the fastest growing plant on the planet that's sustainable, renewable resource you can feel good about having next to your horse.
Thriving on very little water and without the use of pesticides or fertilizers, bamboo is a natural and biodegradable fiber with a small environmental footprint.
The benefits don't stop there though. Bamboo is also moisture wicking, antibacterial, breathable, hypoallergenic, and resistant to UV rays, making it the ideal fiber for equine gear.
Available in cinches, rope, and mule tape halters, leads, lunge lines, reins, and Macatis, the Eco Lux line has something to offer every tack room.
Visit your local Weaver Leather dealer today to view the entire Ecolux bamboo gear line or visit www.ridethebrand.com/Ecolux.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Ride Podcast. This episode, we have guest Bud Lyon joining us, and you're likely familiar with Bud as he is one of our original Horse and Rider on Demand experts, and as well as a trainer who frequently contributes to Horse and Rider magazine. So, Bud, thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited. I've been wanting to do this for a while. It's a lot of pressure you put on me with that build up there on that intro, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this has been in the works for like over a year now. We've been trying to sit down and get you on the podcast. So I'm very pumped that we finally have been able to. Well, maybe. I don't know. You're kind of in a winter storm right now. So we might or might not be actually doing this interview.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right about that. We're going through a crazy winter storm here in North Texas, the likes of which I'm told they haven't seen in several decades. In fact, I think they said since the 1980s, maybe. So woke up this morning and the weather app said it was 2 degrees, and with the wind chill felt like -18. And so it's uncharted territory for this Southern California native, that's for sure. So
yeah, you know it's bad when Michaela and I are in Colorado and it's colder in Texas than it is here in Colorado, and we can see the ground. We don't even have any snow. We're getting the cold weather, but not nearly what you guys are getting.
yeah, it's interesting for sure. I just bought a new facility, and my wife and I are very excited about it. But we're about to learn about all the challenges that come from upgrading to a bigger facility that we don't know the nuances of. So I've already called our plumber and said, please be on standby for later next week because I want to get in line now because I feel like I'm going to need you. So.
It's the gift that just keeps on giving there.
Oh man, I'm telling you, it's a blessing and a curse. That's for sure. So.
Well, anyway, let's start at the beginning. I know you've just kind of mentioned that you have a new property and all that fun stuff, but let's go back to where it actually started. You said you're from Southern California. How did you get involved in horses from the start?
Well, I like to tell the story in the narrative that it started with my father. He grew up with horses and livestock, and he's from the rural southeast originally, and he and my mom met in Louisiana in the 8th grade, and they were high school sweethearts. Went to college, and graduated from college. And my dad immediately got a job with Ralston Purina at the time, and he was a sales rep for their feed division. And so they sent him and my mom, all over the southeast, and my sister and I were born in the South. And I think horses and animals were always kind of the thing that bonded us as a family. And my dad left Purina and got into the oil and gas business, and historians know that went bust in the 80s. And when that happened, he had a sister who was living in Southern California, playing in real estate, and she mentioned, you should come out here. Real estate is booming. You would do great at this. And so that inspired a relocation to Southern California. And I say this with love, but for a good old country boy moving from the South to Southern California, I think that was a little bit of a lifestyle change and an eye opener. And I jokingly say that, when we got to Southern California, I think my dad looked around and saw the surfing culture and the skateboarding culture, and he was like, "No, kids, I don't get it. We're gonna do the horses." And so I feel like he, pushed, nudged us, to keep doing the horses specifically because that was something that he was familiar with and he understood and he gravitated to, and as a family, we had some familiarity with that, and so I jokingly say that he pushed it into overdrive because he was scared we were going to end up with tattoos and piercings at the age of 9 and living homeless on the street or something. But I'm sure he would tell the story differently, but that's the way I interpret it. But nonetheless, my sister and I were both involved in 4-H as kids, and we mostly concentrated on the horse aspect, and we came up, doing the 4-H shows and open horse shows. In Southern California, most people don't have the space to keep horses in their backyard. We grew up near the coast, so that's especially true, in Orange County, where real estate is limited and so valuable. So there was a county extension 4-H farm actually on the University of California Irvine campus, which was just a few blocks from where we lived, and I think that was probably a little unique at the time. And I don't know if I know that particular one doesn't exist anymore. I'm not sure if any of them do. But it was a great opportunity, I think, for kids in an urban area or suburban area who, didn't have the same kind of access to keeping livestock, and specifically horses, in their yard or closer to home. And so it was this, wonderfully unique little kind of haven for kids that lived in an urban environment, but wanted to be involved in agriculture and with animals and with horses. And luckily for us, it was convenient, which is a huge benefit of anything that you're going to do, I think. So in high school, I would go to the 4-H farm in the morning, and we had we kept a handful of horses there in a barn, and I would clean stalls and feed horses, and then I'd go to class, and then come back in the afternoons after school was over, and do it all over again. And luckily, it was all pretty much within walking distance. I'd have to, kind of hop the fence and cut across the pasture to get there. But my high school ended up being, relatively close. And so, I think from there, we sort of gravitated to the smaller open shows, in Southern California. And there were times where we kept horses at public boarding facilities, in Orange County, over in Costa Mesa at the fairgrounds, and then in Huntington Beach at the Huntington Beach Equestrian Center. And along the way, we met some professional trainers that were working out of those facilities, and they were nice enough to work with us and kind of help us springboard to the next level from there, which was into the AQHA shows, where we started doing the all around stuff. And at this point, I think my dad felt like he wanted to try to put us in a position to be as successful as we could at something that we were showing an interest in, and something that we were working hard to achieve our goals with. So we started commuting further into other areas to train with trainers in Southern California, like Dana Hokana, who was in Temecula at the time, and then Todd Crawford, who was located right next door. And from there, it just sort of progressed. I mean, I again, I started, out at the AQHA level doing the all around classes. So that was pleasure, trail, and showmanship, and Western riding, and a little bit of everything. And I think that created a great background, to get a taste of all of it and to learn some of the fundamentals and all that stuff. And then from there we kind of segued into the reining and the rein cow horse stuff, and you know, then it just sort of created a life of its own for me, I think.
I have to say, I totally agree with you on the urban aspect, where it is important when you find that community, because I'm also from that urban lifestyle, where I'm from Chicago. We don't really, people don't really understand the horse showing thing. And growing up, when I said I showed horses, people looked at me really funny. And like you said, people don't really have them in their backyard and all that. So yeah, it's huge that you were able to find that community and that support system within that urban lifestyle.
Yeah, I think it was, um, it was really something unique. A lot of my peers in school didn't have those hobbies or those interests or those activities. And so when you found other, people who did, then, you really kind of develop a common interest and a commonality with those people. And, it was, it was a great activity to be involved in as a family. I mean, it's something that we could all do, on some level. And I think that it also teaches kids responsibility and great life lessons. And, it certainly did for me. I think you learn, about caring for animals and other individuals, but you also, learn that it takes, hard work and dedication, and that, you have to put certain things above your own interests at times. And, those are important lessons for kids to learn. And I think, and, certainly was for me. And, again, it kind of cemented the foundation that we abide by in my business to this day. So the horses always come first around here. And it's cold, it's miserable, the last few days around here, the waters are freezing, but hey, you got to get out there and make sure those horses are cared for, and you got to make sure that they're healthy and they're as comfortable as you can possibly make them. And if that means that you're not warm or you haven't eaten yet, then so be it. That's just part of it. So
I think Michaela can probably relate to that last part, because the other day I was talking to her and she said she was in her bathtub filling up water to go water her horses because her hose froze.
Right. So that's a trick I just learned about, actually. I didn't know anything about that until about 24 hours ago, but I've seen that floating around on social media. So I don't know if we can water 60 head of horses just based on the size of our bathtub, but it's probably something that we need to be doing just in case anyways. So yeah.
Thankfully, Michaela only has 2 horses that she has to keep watered during all of this.
Yeah, I just read about one this morning for that I thought was kind of interesting. I hadn't thought of, but I guess there's some people who are using a 55-gallon drum as a burn barrel and putting it next to their stock tank, so that their livestock who are out in the pastures, if their stock tanks are frozen over, then if you build a fire in a 55-gallon drum and make it a burn barrel and put it next to the edge of the stock tank, then sometimes that will melt the ice just enough that your livestock can get over there and drink a little bit. So I'm relying on the experience and the wealth of information that a lot of other folks who live in different parts of the country have that I don't.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of very creative things pop up on Facebook lately for all of the ways that people are trying to overcome this coldness that everybody seems to be experiencing. So yeah, I feel yeah, but I also don't have 60 head of horses. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, everybody seems to be experiencing it, except for some of my friends in Scottsdale, Arizona. So, shout out to my friends in Scottsdale. Love you and hate you all at the same time, right about now. So.
Exactly. All right. Well, so going back, you started in the all around, which I agree with you. I also started there. It's a great place to learn the fundamentals and really just learn how to ride. But then you transitioned over to the cow horse and the reining, which are two of my personal favorite events now. How did you first get involved in that? I know the cow. I mean, it's just such a fun event. I'm sure the minute you saw it, you were like, "That's what I want to do."
Well, interestingly enough, it wasn't the minute I saw it. It was probably the first time I worked a cow that I knew I wanted to do it. When I saw it, right or wrong, it felt foreign to me. I didn't, I think our focus had been coming up through the 4-H and the open shows and the AQHA shows that we went to. Our focus had been so laser like on those events for a while that the cow horse just wasn't on our radar. The way that I fell into it was that I had an all around horse, and we took him to a show in Pomona, California, called the West Coast Circuit, which at the time was a pretty large quarter horse circuit, and had some success at that show. And that horse went home from that show and got hurt, and I remember just being really deflated by that, because we were just coming off a pretty good show and looking forward to the rest of the show year. I think it was only January, so we're looking forward to competing and getting some qualifying points for the youth world, and felt like it was really our year to gain some traction, and then the horse goes and gets hurt. Well, somewhere along the way, my dad had bought a little kind of first reining horse just to learn on, and I think he did it because his kids kept stealing his horses, to be honest with you. So he kind of played around at the all around events just a little bit, and every time he got a nice little horse, then my sister and I would end up taking it and showing it, and he would very graciously relinquish it. But I think what he decided is that he was going to buy himself something that was out of the norm, and then he could go do that, and then maybe that it would be fun for him, and it would be something that we wouldn't take because we were focused on the other stuff, and that might have been true for a hot second. And then unfortunately the all around horse got hurt. So as a way to distract me, my dad said, well, hey, I've got this this little reining horse, and he said, why don't you give it a try. And it was, like I said, something I think he did intentionally just to kind of distract me from the disappointment of knowing that I wasn't going to get to accomplish some of those goals that I had set for myself that year on the other horse, because it looked like the other horse was going to be down for a while. So quite honestly, I fell into it because of that. And at the time I must have been, I don't know, maybe 13, 14 years old, something like that. And I started doing the reining, and which is, a whole different skill set compared to some of the all around stuff. And by the time the all around horse was healed up and ready to go back to the show pen, I wasn't, not in those events anyways. So, I just, I think it became this sort of just natural fit for me that I enjoyed doing that. We ended up selling the all around horses. And at that time, we made the transition over to Todd Crawford's barn. And at the time, Todd, was very successful in the reining and just starting his rein cow horse career. As a matter of fact, I think the first year that I trained with Todd, he still had some all-around horses, and he maybe, was just at the point in his career where he was deciding that his focus was going to be just on the reining and the rein cow horse. and he ended up, sending those all around horses home or to other trainers, and just focusing on those two events. But that was sort of the progression, as it happened for myself. And to answer your question, Nicole, I started out learning how to do the reining and getting the fundamentals of the rein work down. And then, by virtue of being immersed in Todd's program, he, let me work a cow. And I think that was the moment where I was like, oh, like this is something special and unique. And that's when I got the bug. And so I'm sure everybody has their own version of that story, but that's how it happened for me.
I feel like so many people start out in the all around, which is such a great foundation, and then they get a little bit of a taste of another event and they're like, ooh, this is so much fun. And I think a lot of great trainers come about that way.
Yeah, the all around, I don't regret doing it one bit. I mean, I feel like I've said this before in private conversations. I feel like I'm part of the last generation that did more than one event in a way, like that didn't specialize. And I know there are still, kids and adults out there that do the all around and they do more than one event. But I'm talking about, when I was growing up on the West Coast, the NRCHA was very prevalent. Obviously that's where it started and it has its roots. We weren't involved in that because we weren't just quite as aware of that as we were, the AQHA. The NRHA had some events on the West Coast, but also at that time not as many as there are now, and not as they were far and away outnumbered by the AQHA stuff. And so what we did, and what I feel like a lot of my peers did, is from about January on, you went to a lot of these quarter horse shows, and you showed sometimes in the spring every weekend at a different town, and the AQHA at that time was booming, and those events that we did, I think created a solid foundation as far as understanding horsemanship and equitation and cadence and stride and footfall and collection and softness and all these things that I think were cemented into me, at a young age through repetition and just through, good, strong fundamental teaching. But, we would go to a horse show and, show in multiple events with the same horse. And even as I transitioned away from the all around events and into the reining and the cow horse stuff, the same applied. I mean, I would still sometimes go to a quarter horse show in Santa Barbara, California, and I might show in the reining, the cutting, the cow horse, the roping, and I certainly wasn't uber competitive in some of those events, but we would do it because it was fun, or to help our fellow exhibitors out, or because it was good for the horse. I think generations before me did that, and sometimes they did it all on the same horse as well, but they might do things like show in the roping, the cutting, the reining, the western riding, the trail, all on the same horse, because that's what you had. We didn't specialize as much as we do today. And so I think a lot of that background has allowed me to cross over into some of the other events. And now that the ranch events have become so popular, they are this sort of amalgamation of all those disciplines to me. You've got some events in the ranch classes that that rely on a horsemanship type background, or on a trail type background, or reining, or cattle knowledge. So I think having that experience at the time, I don't know if I took it for granted, but I probably didn't realize how well it was going to pay off for me down the road. I mean, when you're a kid, I don't know that you necessarily think that way in general, but I certainly never envisioned that that background was going to lend itself to, allowing me to venture into some of these other events and be able to cross over with a smoother transition than I might have otherwise if I had not had that background.
I totally agree with that on so many levels. Yeah, like you were saying, with the foot placement and the cadence and body control and all these things that I mean, you take for granted all these things when you're riding and doing them every day, but you're so right. They definitely help you transition into other events a lot, more, I don't want to say seamlessly, because you do still run into, bumps along the road when you transition to another event, but it does really help the transition. And with the ranch classes getting so popular, I mean, we've talked about on the podcast with other on other episodes, the ranch trail is now an AQHA approved class. So I see that being just as huge as the ranch riding, which you have a lot of experience with. But I love being able to take a cow horse or a reiner and put them over poles for a trail class or do the ranch riding. And it's good for their brain. It's good for them to just go out and do other things. And I have a horse that's not going to make it in the cow horse necessarily, but he's really good going over the poles and stuff. So he would make a really good ranch riding and a ranch trail horse. And so I've been playing around with that. But my experience in the all around doing all those events has definitely helped prepare me to teach this horse to do this event.
No, I think you're absolutely right, Nicole. And I think you're spot on. We're seeing an explosion in interest and growth in the ranch classes, all over the world, really, not just here in the States. But I think a lot of those horses benefit from doing more than one event. And I think the riders do as well. I mean, I've seen zero downside to it. When the ranch riding first became popular and some of the exhibitors with a reining background, were dabbling in it. I think there was this narrative that, that wasn't good for reining horses, to do the ranch riding because, it would potentially teach them to break to the trot when you didn't want them to. And that could not have been more of a false narrative. I mean, as someone who does both events, I can tell you that I've never had a reining horse break gait when because he, also did the ranch riding. That's just not the way it works. But what we're seeing is the ranch classes have been so beneficial to horses that need a second job or maybe need a different job or need something that freshens them up for their primary job. And I mean that mentally, physically, both. But we see, for example, reining horses that maybe have become a little show smart, as we like to call it, and learn to anticipate or get away with some bad habits in the show pen. And those horses have really benefited from the ranch classes where they go into the arena and they don't run a reining type pattern every single time, and it tends to give those horses a mental break. It gives those horses something else to think about. It makes them better at their primary job. It prolongs their careers as performance horses, I think. And you're right, the ranch trail, debuted at the World Show last year in 2020, and although it wasn't a World Championship class, it was incredibly well attended, and the participation level was very good for a class that for its debut. And I think as an industry, we only expect that to keep getting better and to grow. And it seems like there's a lot of interest in that. The ranch on the rail, or Western working rail classes, as it was also called at the AQHA World Show last year, have also seen an explosion in popularity. And I think that's something that really both humans and horses, are are taking advantage of right now, because, again, it creates the opportunity to do more than one event. I think we're seeing the pendulum swing a little bit away from specialization. Not that it won't still continue to happen and occur, and I'm not casting judgment on that. There's an art to everything, and I don't care what event it is. To watch a horse perform well at its chosen event is an art form. And but I think there are also people and horses who want to and benefit from doing more than just one event. So rather than going to a horse show and showing up 2 days before you show, showing, maybe waiting around a few more days to show again, there are a certain segment of the population that would like to do more than one event and like to show in something more regularly. And I think the ranch classes are offering that opportunity. And it's also kind of a throwback to like I touched on before, my generation, who a lot of times at the AQHA level came up doing more than one event. You didn't just show in the reining, or you didn't just show in the Western riding. You did more than one event over the course of the weekend or the course of the week. And I think that you're seeing people respond to that, and I think the horses are certainly the beneficiaries of that as well.
Yeah, well, I think it just really helps both horse and rider refine their cues in all events across the board, whether you're doing the reining and the ranch riding or any other event. And one thing that I really like is you're kind of helping to play into this with Horse and Rider on Demand, because you have a series on transitioning a reining horse to ranch riding. And I find it so interesting because the horse pretty much effortlessly transitioned into it, because you hadn't done anything with the ranch riding on this horse before. And I think a lot of people can take notes from it, that they can transition their horses into other events to help not only their horse but themselves.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think the one benefit that you see from reining trained and rein cow horse trained horses is that foundation that's put onto those horses early in their training careers. And so I'm not talking about pressure, I'm talking about the foundation that starts with body control. And it's so much easier for me to transition a horse into a class like the ranch riding if they come from a foundation where they've been taught collection and body control, at an earlier age, or at a early on in their training process. Now, does that mean we can't do it on another horse? No. But it's certainly, I can't get to step B without step A. So as an example, if someone sends a horse to me for training, and the background that it comes from doesn't have that same history of body control, I have to spend my time getting that part first before we can even worry about the nuances of a different event. So I think that being able to move the hip around, or being able to manipulate the shoulders, or being able to make sure that the rib cage is aligned with the other body parts is integral to any event. But specifically in the ranch riding, if I have the ability to make adjustments by fixing something, that it just makes my job so much easier, and it makes those horses transition into the ranch riding so much easier, because they already understand elevation of the back, and they understand all these things. So again, it's certainly the ranch riding and the ranch classes are appealing to a lot of people, because I think folks look at that and say, well, I used to do that, or my horse could do that, or that looks like fun, and all of those things can be true. I think that it makes for a quicker speed to success sometimes when they have a foundation on them, like that comes from something like the reining or the rein cow horse, where those horses have been taught at an early age, hey, when I put the leg here, that means you need to move your hip away from that pressure, and step over. And that translates to the trail as well. I mean, if I need to fix a piece that is, for lack of a better term, malfunctioning as I'm going through or over a trail obstacle, if I have a horse that understands how to move away from leg pressure, move laterally, then it's a lot easier for me to make those adjustments and to, teach that horse where to be in position than it is if I have a horse that, doesn't have a foundation of body control, and a horse that maybe is numb to my leg or wants to push back at my leg instead of moving away from it. These are just examples, but that's been my experience, is that, having a horse like that certainly makes my job as a trainer much easier, and it allows that horse to transition, more quickly into, an event like the ranch riding.
Well, and I think that kind of ties into something that you were saying earlier about how people had this mentality that if you take your reining horse and put it in a ranch riding class, they're gonna, break to a trot when they shouldn't, or this and that. But I really think it's the opposite, because if you have all those fundamentals and you can get your horse to do literally anything you ask, whether it's a transition, a speed cue, a change of leads, moving their body over to side pass them, it's only going to get them more broke and softer for when you're in the reining pen or in the ranch riding pen. And I can't see it not benefiting in any way.
There's zero downside to it. And I mean, I say that as someone who, shows at the NRHA events and the, AQHA, ranch events. I can tell you, I've been doing it long enough now that I feel like if there were going to be, some type of unintended consequences, I feel pretty confident it would have shown up by now. But, the beauty of a ranch riding pattern is, for the most part, no two patterns are even remotely the same, which is, you can't say that for a rein cow horse pattern necessarily, or a reining pattern. And part of the reason why I believe we see so much anticipation from our reining horses, or our, reined pattern horses, is that they are smart and they learn to figure those patterns out pretty quickly. And, they learn to anticipate in the center, where so much happens for, specifically a reining horse who might have to speed up, slow down, change leads, change direction, spin either direction. You see a lot of reining horses who have some anxiety in the center of the show pen. Whereas a ranch riding pattern, very rarely are you asked to stop and turn in the center of the show pen or change leads in the center of the show pen. You do change leads on the diagonal quite often from, going across the arena. But you might also change leads going down the length of the arena at some point. And I think all that does is, again, freshen a horse up, who has learned to anticipate. When you go and do those ranch riding patterns, you're keeping the horse guessing a little bit. And that is part of the psychological part of the game of training horses, especially, a reining horse. One of my mentors, Randy Paul, said one time, you spend the first 2 years of a horse's training, teaching them what to do. And then you spend the rest of their, career teaching them to wait on you to tell them when to do it. And I think that there's a lot of truth in that. You cement that foundation, and then those horses, the naivete wears off to some degree, and those horses, think they know what's coming, or, they get worried about what's coming. And so then you have to spend a lot of time, making those horses learn to wait, or keeping them guessing a little bit, for lack of a better term, as to what they might be asked to do. And that's why you see so much schooling in the reining sometimes, and I think the ranch riding, if nothing else, can be used as a great tool to school your reining horse. Even if you don't have any desire or intention to competitively show the ranch riding, I think it's an excellent opportunity for people to do something different with their reining horse, or perhaps their rein cow horse, who, can also get a little antsy in the show pen. I think that there's no downside to it. And I think that, as an example, I have a youth rider right now, and she's had a lot of success on a reining horse who I think is, 9 or 10 years old this year. But, towards the end of last year, he started to get, perform less than what he was capable of in the reining pen. And, we maybe, against her will, sent her into the ranch riding pen, quite a bit. And, while she's very gifted at it, and her horse, in my opinion, is an excellent candidate for it, it wasn't something that was necessarily her idea, but she ended up, developing an appreciation for it. And it seems like her horse now is back to fulfilling his potential in the reining pen. And I think both trainer and rider now agree that at least some of that is because of what we've been doing with the ranch riding, because we gave that horse something different to do and something else to think about. And we did it, for a while. We sort of took the reining part out of the equation, and then we circled back around to the reining, and she's marking some scores that she hadn't seen in a while out of that horse. Now, perhaps we're being too self-indulgent on that, but I can't point to anything else that would have caused that, that type of metamorphosis. So, for myself, I really truly believe that, there's a lot of good that can come from doing more than one event on these horses. And I think the public is telling us is that they want to do something, that's fun, that is more than just one class at one horse show. And the participation numbers at the shows sort of merit that a little bit, and or show us that. And I think that what people are finding is that those horses go into some of those other events, and they show in those other events. There's no pressure, there's no expectations sometimes if they have never done the events before, and those horses seemingly take a deep breath after a few trips through the ranch riding or the ranch trail pattern or the ranch on the rail, and they seem to decompress a little bit. And that only that only makes them better, I think, in their other events long term. And I think it's great for the welfare of the horse.
I'm totally in agreement with you. Like I've mentioned earlier, I come from the all around. I love being able to show in multiple events because I was the person that had one horse and I did 7 to 8 events with her. And I always enjoyed it. Am I competitive at every single event that I went into? Not necessarily, but I loved the challenge that came with doing multiple events with one horse. And you're so right. It benefits the horse. I have a horse right now who um, took a step away from the cow horse stuff because he was legitimately running away when he saw a cow, which, I mean, you've shown cow horses. That's something you want to avoid when you have a cow horse. So the people who had owned him weren't really sure what to do with him because he wasn't able to compete at the level that they were competing at. And then I came around and I don't know what I'm doing in the cow horse, so he takes care of me. But I also do other things with him. I'm putting him over poles to do the ranch trail. I'm teaching him the transitions he would need to do the ranch riding. I take him on trail rides. I go swimming in the reservoir with him. Like I just do all these other things. And then when it came back to doing the cow horse, he marked a 145.5 on the cow the first time back in 3 years with a rider who had never done it before.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I think that's exactly what we're talking about is, again, we've gotten so specialized sometimes as an industry that, we've overlooked the benefit of, doing, something different just to give those horses a mental break sometimes. And a lot of our issues, I don't think are that we're seeing, aren't always physically related. I think as an industry, we do a good job of taking care of our animals and taking care of our equine athletes. But the heart, there's a second part of that equation, and it's the psychological part of performance and competition and the toll that can take on a horse sometimes. And you see plenty of horses that, rein cow horses, for example, that walk into an arena and the first thing they start doing is looking for that cow, right? And, we've bred that into them. We've trained them that they're supposed to do that on some level, but it sure does make it challenging when there's not going to be a cow involved and you have to go do a rein work pattern. And so I think, again, the ranch classes offer an opportunity, to mitigate some of that psychological, anxiety, but also, allow a horse to be competitive in something different, and allow exhibitors to have fun and be competitive in something different. And again, that's not to say that, specialization is necessarily bad, because, it is absolutely fun to ride or to watch anything that is exceptionally good at its job. And I would never take that away from a reining horse or from a rein cow horse or a cutting horse or anything like that. But I think what we're talking about is, as an industry, how we've pivoted, to some degree from, a background where, we had exhibitors and horses that did more than one event, to an age of specialization, which is prevalent in our society as a whole. I mean, I think you see, kids who specialize early on in athletics now, whereas when I was a kid, I would do, multiple sports, and I was probably terrible at all of them. But, I think that was a lot more common than now. What I see and what I hear is kids pick something, an activity early on sometimes, and they focus 100% on that activity, whether it's soccer or baseball or football or basketball or whatever, instead of, being a 3-sport athlete necessarily, or, diversifying as much. And I'm sure there are exceptions to all of it, but I think, as a society, we've seen, that people tend to specialize in one area a lot more. And again, now I think what we're starting to see, at least in some parts of the horse industry, in the Western performance horse industry, is the opportunity, for that pendulum to swing back the other way, and offer, an outlet, or a forum for people to do more than one event, and to allow their horses to do more than one event.
Well, and I think that's kind of the foundation of your training program, is you have clients that do multiple events like we've mentioned. So how exactly did you get into training in general?
That's something that, I think just sort of developed over time. We talked about, my background, and growing up as a kid who enjoyed horses, and did all that kind of stuff. I that interest early on, but, for me personally, I ended up spending a lot of time with horse trainers. So about the time I was 14 or 15, my dad would start volunteering me to be, free help for some of these trainers, that, we were, training with, or that we were, around. And I think he firmly believed he did it just to get me out of the house, get his teenage son out of the house, especially during the summers. But you know, uh, so he would volunteer my services to these trainers, that we knew. And of course, what trainer wouldn't want, free help, unless it's bad help. And I have no doubt that I was poor help for some of these guys. I'm sure Todd Crawford would tell you that. But what happened is, I got it up close, and look at that lifestyle. And it was, something that I think, unknowingly, probably, created this interest that, oh, well, this is a lifestyle that, is seemed great. And those were certainly rose colored glasses to a young man who, just thought that, all it was riding horses, and enjoying the whatever success came along with that, and not having a fully formed understanding of what all goes into, actually being a horse trainer, and owning and operating your own business, which is a whole different, thing than the part of actually riding the horses. So, for me, it probably developed, because I would go, and spend these summers in high school and college, sort of apprenticing with these trainers. And, at one point, you know, um, some trainers would offer me a job, and I think I, uh, you know, thought that seemed really glamorous and flattering. And at the time, I was thinking about skipping college, to go on and take one or two of those opportunities. And luckily, my parents basically said, "Listen, you're going to college." And so the joke around my house is that they drug me to college kicking and screaming. And then once I got there and realized, how that was a heck of a lot easier than getting up and working an 18-hour day, in the middle of the summer training. I loved school, so they joked that they had to drag me out of college once I got there. But they drug me in and they drug me out. But in seriousness, I think that I went to college thinking, okay, this is something I'm going to go do. I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to, fulfill this, commitment to my family and to myself. And then after that, I'm going to go try the training thing and just see where it goes. And I think I had that mentality pretty early on, from the time I was a freshman in college, that, hey, this is something I think I'm at least going to give it a shot, and see where it goes. And then, if it doesn't pan out, then that's fine. But for me, I think it was an unintended consequence of just spending so much time around, trainers, whether it was, Christmas vacation, spring break, summer vacation, whatever. And, going to these, traveling and living with these people, some of whom I, on some level I idolized. So that's sort of what created the initial seed. And then, it just sort of developed from there for me.
So you mentioned that you worked with a lot of trainers, some of them that you idolized. Are there a couple of trainers in particular that you would consider your mentors, or maybe who have just offered you some sound advice that you still hold really true to your training philosophy today?
Well, certainly. I mean, I don't think anyone gets to where they are without being influenced by someone, or multiple someones. And I'm one of those people who believes in the cliche that you can learn something from everyone, regardless of whether it's the wrong thing. So, I mentioned, Dana Hokana, who, we did the all around events with when I was younger. When I first started riding reining horses, there was a gentleman named Rick Bear in Southern California who was and still is a trainer. He gave me some of my first reining lessons. I mentioned Todd, and he is certainly someone who influenced me a lot when I was younger. I think watching Todd's work ethic was something that um, really influenced me. I would go and sleep on, spend a couple summers sleeping on Todd's couch, and he would get up at 3 or 4 in the morning to go to work, and that meant I was getting up to go with him, and we might not come back to the house until 10 o'clock that night. And I was lucky if we stopped and ate lunch along the way. But watching that, but then seeing the success that Todd had, I think impacted me quite a bit. I spent a couple of summers with Don Murphy when I was in college, and I think watching Don do multiple events also impacted my career in a way, because at that time Don had was living in Northern California, and he had rope horses and reining horses and cow horses and some horses that they would show in the herd work. And certainly seeing that and understanding that one horse can do multiple events, or the benefit of transitioning a horse into a different event, and what that can do for a horse's psyche and longevity, I think really impacted me. I spent 7 years working for Randy Paul, and obviously Randy does the reining and the rein cow horse, and He's a NRHA $1 million rider. He's, won the title of world's greatest horseman. He's also someone that impacted me greatly, because you learn that, those horses can do more than one event. And while that is increasingly rare these days, I think those three programs in particular, Todd's and Don's and Randy's, all had a really, really strong foundation. And, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with that body control and, that collection and softness and those kind of things. But, those three guys, I think, had a huge impact on my outlook on a training program and what is considered a quote unquote broke horse, finished horse. And a lot of people, I think, confuse gentle and broke. But to me, those guys knew how to make what we considered, a broke horse and a good finished product of a horse that, was well trained, had a great foundation, was gentle, but, a horse that for the most part you could put anybody on and that horse would, be able to perform its job. Along the way, since I've started my own business, now here's where we shift into the part that young Bud Lyon did not understand, which is that it is a business, and that is something different than training, right? And when I was younger, I got into this industry because I wanted to work with horses all day long, and it turns out that there are a lot of days where that's the thing I do the least, because now you've transitioned to becoming a service provider for the public, and that's, pun intended, a whole different animal. And so I bring that up because I think since I've left Randy's program and I've gone and out and started my own business, now I solicit business advice from a lot of trainers and industry professionals. Not to say that I don't still need, the occasional sounding board for the training aspect of it, because I think that is constant. I don't think you ever get to a point in your training career where, you just have it all figured out. I think when you get to that point, if you feel that way, you're in trouble. I think you have to constantly keep, pushing yourself to learn more and to reinvent yourself and to, find out what the young guys are doing, or draw on the wisdom of the older trainers, who have all that experience and knowledge. But there are always, this industry is evolving so fast, whether it's the reining, the cow horse, the ranch classes, that you really have to work hard to stay on top of that evolution if you want to remain competitive. So there are certainly aspects where I'm observing and I spend a lot of time riding with other trainers in my area because I have the luxury of being able to do that. But, I also spend a lot of time trying to figure out how can I offer the best service, and what does the business aspect of this look like?
Yeah, I think that's a really important part. And you just talked about how you still go and ride and work with other people. And I think that's what's so great about our Horse and Rider on Demand platform that you're a part of, is the fact that people don't have to go and find a trainer or multiple trainers to try and ride with. They just have access to all of your training content and Brad's training content at the tips of their fingers. So being able to utilize that is important when they're trying to be successful in the show pen.
Well, certainly I agree. I wouldn't choose to be involved with the on-demand project if I didn't believe in it. And it's really important to me that we are doing it right and that we are creating value for our subscribers, and we're producing content that is genuinely allowing them to get better and to gain insight into how they can improve themselves and their horses. Anything that I'm involved with, I want to be done well. And I'm sure that comes with some aggravation on your end, because I probably drive you guys crazy sometimes, trying to make sure that we get some things done to my, standard. But I think that for me, it's just important that we can, give people who don't have the same access to, trainers or to these services, that, information and content that, that really is something that they can put to good use. I mean, I recognize that not everyone grew up, in the same situation I did, and didn't have parents who, encourage their interest and involvement with horses, or that didn't have, there are certainly folks who don't have the financial resources, and I think that, for me, I want to reach those people who are in that position, who really want to learn and are thirsty for knowledge, and, but don't have the convenience of being able to, you know, load up and go down the street and ride with their local trainer, or ride with their NRHA professional, or whatever it is. So whether it's the reining, the ranch riding, the ring cow horse, any of the things that we discuss in the on-demand project, I mean, we're always looking for, I think, I'm always striving to, create content that people can watch and say, oh, I never thought about that, or, oh, that actually really helped, and so that's my goal for the on-demand platform, and I think it's everybody's goal.
Well, and like Michaela kind of mentioned, where you have access to it all at your fingertips, you don't have to wait for your favorite trainer who's hosting a clinic to come to town. During these COVID times where we're not traveling as much or going to horse shows, um, having that access available anytime you want it is huge. But also, it's not just for people who show. I think the content that you produce specifically, Bud, is stuff that everybody should be doing with their horse, whether they're trail riding, whether they're doing the all around stuff, whether they are competing in the reining or the ranch riding or the cow horse. They're all fundamentals that you need to know to have a safe, quiet, finished horse. So I always love to stress that, like, yes, you are a reining and ranch riding professional, and that's what you do most of your time. But the stuff that you have on video is stuff that, even Michaela, who's a barrel racer, uses in her daily training routine. And it's so important, I think, for people to realize that, these videos can help them in any discipline that they're doing.
Well, I'm appreciate you saying that, and I feel like there is not any situation where someone who has a horse, that's handy, meaning they have body control, and they can, you can use that to your advantage. I don't feel like anybody's ever had a horse, that had that ability, who said, oh, well, that's, I wish I didn't have that. I mean, everybody wants a horse that is maneuverable and easy to work with, and that allows you to have fun and accomplish a task, right? And it doesn't matter if we're talking about going into the show pen or we're talking about trail riding. If you come across a gate and don't want to have to get off to open that gate on the trail ride, and you have a horse that will allow you to do that, I don't see the downside of that, and I don't know anyone who regretted having a horse that would allow them that opportunity or that ability. I just feel like, having a well-mannered, disciplined, fundamentally sound horse should be everyone's goal. And that doesn't mean you have to take it to the show pen, but, to be able to go out and saddle your horse and get on and, side pass over and unlatch that gate and, ride through it, shut it, and, ride off and go do whatever it is you're going to do. I think anybody who's ever had a horse who wouldn't do that for them, who has struggled with that horse, who didn't want to move laterally off your leg, or who wanted to, maybe suck back, or, who didn't want to maneuver through an obstacle like that. You know, I feel like anybody who's had that experience, appreciates and covets a horse that will willingly do that. And having a horse that's willingly guided is a pleasure to have, regardless of what your goals are, and that includes recreational riding. So, a good foundation never harmed anyone, not a horse or a human, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Well, and I think the other thing that I really love is that even though we're producing, a video series, in some way you're still connecting with these riders. I know that we've talked recently about people emailing you and telling you how not only appreciative they are of the videos, but then also sending over things that they do struggle with their horse so that the next video shoot we do, we can include those kinds of topics. And I love the community that has become part of On Demand, and it's growing. And I'm really excited that we're going to be able to keep producing content now that our travel bans have been semi-lifted. We'll be able to start videoing again, and it'll be good to kind of get back into the swing of things pre-COVID.
Yeah, I mean, we showed at the AQHA World Show back in November, and we were fortunate enough to have some great success. And I am certainly grateful and humbled for that success. But I have to tell you, one of my favorite experiences at the World Show had nothing to do with the competition. It was because I had not one, not two, but three different individuals mentioned to me that they subscribed to the on-demand service, and how much they enjoyed. They mentioned how much they enjoyed the content, and what I was, what we were putting out there, and that it had helped them. And that is so fulfilling and rewarding for me personally, that when someone is gracious enough to tell you that, then I think for me, it really makes me feel like we're going the right direction, and that we're accomplishing what we set out to accomplish. I love hearing from folks like that. And the first thing I always say is, if you have ideas, or something that a concept that you'd like to know more about, that we're always open to suggestions. And as you guys know, we have had some people follow up with us on that, and send us a private message or an email saying, hey, just following up on our conversation, I thought of this, or this is something that's been giving me trouble at home, and I'd really like to know how you handle that situation, or what you would do differently with that horse. And so those are the kind of things that are incredibly rewarding for me. And again, it's always fun to be successful in the show pen, but when people come up to you and tell you that you've really created value for them and their experience with their horse, then to me, that's a whole different type of personal gratification.
Absolutely. It's really rewarding to know that you're making a difference, even if it's just a couple people who have approached you and said it. You're making a difference for those people, and that's so much more important for the industry as a whole than the trophies or the accolades or whatever. It's knowing that you're helping this industry grow, and that's huge. If anybody who's listening to this has not checked out On Demand yet, they can visit ondemand.horseandrider.com, sign up for a 7-day free trial. I think we have hundreds of videos with Bud specifically available that if you haven't had a chance to check out, you need to. Before we wrap up this interview, because Bud, we've had you on the phone for now an hour and a half, even though we promised it would be under an hour.
Hey, don't rush me off. It's cold and snowing out here. I'm perfectly warm at this table in the kitchen talking to you guys.
Well, if our listeners want to learn more about you, where can they find you online, on social media? How can they reach out to you?
Oh, shameless plug time. I love this part. You And you can reach me or learn more about my training program on social media. Of course, we're Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Am I forgetting any of them? We don't do the Twitter.
No
But
TikTok?
you know, I keep my youth
He's
kids
the
keep,
star of our TikTok.
yeah. My youth riders keep telling me I need to do the TikTok, and I just don't think I'm cool enough for TikTok. You know, I'm afraid I'd get shamed off of TikTok. I don't know. I'm gonna have to practice my lip syncing skills. I think and my dance moves they're not salvageable. They're reprehensible. So I'm gonna have to figure out a shtick before we do TikTok. But certainly, the other social media platforms. We have a website, Bud, LionPerformanceHorses.com. You can email me at bud@budlionperformancehorses.com. Certainly, On Demand is a great platform to learn more about my training program. So, yeah, I think that just to kind of touch on what you were saying, Nicole, before we jump off the phone here, one of the things that I think is really important for our industry to continue to thrive is to have what I call new blood, and that means we can't rely on the folks who are already in the industry. I think that if you're not growing, you're dying, and cultivate interest in horses as an industry and as an opportunity for kids and families to grow together and bond just like my family did over horses. But I feel like kids have so many other options these days between all the activities and schoolwork that is offered to them and is on their plate. And I think that, as an industry, we need to continue to, bring people into the fold and make them feel welcomed and comfortable. And that, the on-demand platform can be, a vessel for that in some regards, because not everyone, like we mentioned, has the opportunity to, ride with a professional trainer, on a regular basis. And, I think, the content that we're producing is specifically geared for people who, could be in that position, but want to learn more and want to enjoy their horses and want to spend, more time getting their horses, to meet their goals. So for me, I think, as much as we focus on the technical aspects of, performance, sometimes in the on-demand program, I think that it's also a great opportunity, to bring in people, who haven't had those same opportunities and to hopefully help, grow our industry and provide, an appreciation for these equine athletes and these companion animals that we have.
Totally. I think we might need to do a part 2 podcast because I feel like we're just like at the tip of the iceberg and there's so much to talk about. Or maybe we just need to get Bud his own podcast because I've loved this conversation so much.
Yes.
That's a lot of Bud. I don't know.
Oh, that'll be the name of it. That's a lot of Bud. Perfect. Nailed it.
Well, I'm down for it, especially if the weather keeps up like this. So we'll carve out a little time every snowy morning. So
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate getting to talk with you and spend time with you. And we're so glad that you had time to sit down and talk with us, even if it's just because you're snowed in Antarctica, aka North Texas. But we so appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hey, snow days are the best days. I'm down for it. So thank you guys for all your hard work and for letting me join you on the podcast.
Once again, we'd like to thank Weaver Leather for sponsoring this episode of The Ride.
Thank you guys for tuning into The Ride podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Follow Horse and Rider Magazine on social media and find us at horseandrider.com. If you guys have any questions or comments, please be sure to hit us up at horseandrider@aimmedia.com. We want to hear from you guys.
And if you like what you're listening to, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes.
How many stars, Michaela?
5 stars, please.